Well, maybe you're going a little far with that. I couldn't breathe. I was just watching the scene. I was like watching it as a viewer almost, just like I am.
So, but that scene, that's what The Chosen does so well. You like, because I was thinking if they do the scene, they're gonna make it like Dallas is gonna put his twist on it, because that scene is, you made it practical. You took it and then you subverted the expectations of what we're used to seeing with a scene like that, with a big miracle like that. So then his feet are coming underneath the water. Like that's something. And I don't think we've ever seen Jesus walking from an underneath perspective. Like, the only point of reference I can think of really is the Bible television series, miniseries,
Yeah.
which, as you said, looks awful. Like it's just, in my opinion, looks just a blue screen characters. But here you have authentic, lighting, because in the picture that he's posted, you can see the lights up there. That's what gave me the idea. But it's a practical, really thinking through how would this really look like. So that's and you tied it in with like it's the climax of Simon's character arc, this story. So
Yeah.
Is that something that came along? That's something that came along in the process of writing Simon's story? Is just a natural development, or was that like some other kind of idea that you had?
No, it's a good question. So when we were developing the outline for season 3, we were talking about, we knew the feeding of the 5,000 would be a big, a big climax. And we know that right after that is the walking on water. And I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. And then we started, Ryan and Tyler were the ones who were like, well, what if we could? What would it look like? And we like what we always do with The Chosen is we take these Bible stories and we work our way backwards, and we go, all right, what could lead up to that, to make it feel real, to make it feel necessary, and to make it really impactful. And at the same time as we're developing our storylines for Simon and Eden for that season, we were exploring marital tension of Simon being away and what that would look like, and how Eden would start to, even though she thought she could handle this really well, it's not as easy when it actually starts to happen. And so it was like, as we were developing their storyline, we're going, that walking on water scene would be cool, because Simon would be saying, like, it's like an act of, it's not just an act of faith, it's an act of challenge. It's like, what if he's saying, I'll do this, I'll walk on water. Yeah. You know why? Because you can do it. I know you can do it. If you can do that, why can't you fix me and everything else? Why can't you make everything else okay? And it just started to become really interesting and plausible, like knowing what we know of Simon. And so then I while we were developing it, I texted our Chris June, who's one of our producers and our post-production supervisor. And I said, all right, before we go any further, if I told you we were doing the walking on water sequence, give me on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident would you be that we could pull it off? And he wouldn't give me a number, but he said, I think we can do it. And I'm like, all right. And one of our composers, Matt Nelson, is brilliant. And whenever Dan Hasseltine, who's the other composer, has a weird idea, which he often does, Matt will say, all right, let's chase it. And we love that phrase. It's such a beautiful phrase. And so we're like, all right, let's chase it. Let's go for broke. We're gonna be bold and push ourselves, and because that's what this story deserves. And so we went for it. But I think the key point is, if you don't, when you're watching it, Eli, even as someone like you who loves the process of making movies, if you spent the whole scene watching it just being impressed with the visual effects, that defeats the purpose. I wanted you to actually care that Simon, when he's saying, I'm right in front of you, believing in you, I've been here all along, and you're breaking up fights in the Decapolis, and faith hasn't been my problem. If you don't care when he says that, and you're not moved when he says that, then it all just doesn't matter. But that's, like you said, I had another friend who watched an early cut of it because he's a VFX guy, and he goes, "Oh, you chosen to this scene.
Yeah.
You made it more than just about the miracle of the water." So we're really proud of that.
Yeah, because because you guys always it's kind of, you guys are a little unfair to like everybody watching, because you don't just like, you're like, we're not just gonna do the miracle, we're also going to have intercut with Eden as well to kind of finish up that storyline, and we're gonna do all this other, like we said we weren't gonna do it, and it's the story conclusion. It's not just like you said, it's not just a big like, oh look, we can do VFX too. Like it's a conclusion. It's the climax of this season-long conflict that's been happening between Simon, or really Simon himself, and Eden. And it's because I remember watching the feeding of the 5,000, and like Simon, he drops his basket and he's mad and he walks off, and I was like, how are they gonna resolve this plot line? Like, what are they gonna do to fix, like, how is he gonna get past this? And then when I saw the storm clouds, I was like, that's the perfect way to,
right.
Like, that's the only way to resolve that story, because that story in the Bible is so much about Simon, and like it's just Jesus, or specifically about Simon. All the other disciples are, it's a ghost, or they're scared, and Simon is the one who kind of steps out. And I know that he says, I'm the rock, or Jesus says, you are the rock, not Peter himself, but like later. But that was Peter's, all about him. So that's you guys found that nugget, and then you explored it, and of course made it like 10 times more emotional than it had to be, which is unfair, because I was super emotional the entire scene. Not just like, I was like, they're doing it, and it's just, the scene itself is so emotionally resonant, and it's beautiful. It's probably the most beautiful scene, like when Peter's under the water and Jesus reaches down for him. The whole scene is just out of a painting. Like, it looks, every shot is beautiful. So.
Well, are you aware of the famous painting of we actually copied, there's a famous painting that's been around for a little while of a camera looking at a camera. I mean, it's a painting, but it's from underneath, it's from Simon's perspective. And so the shot that you see in the show from Simon's perspective, when Jesus's hand breaks through the water, and the music really kicks in, that's we literally had a on our phones an image of that painting. You can Google it and just look up, Jesus reaching through the water painting. And it was kind of a love letter to that moment, to that painting. But I think it was Tyler Thompson, one of my co-writers. It was his idea to do the back and forth between Simon and Eden. And I remember the first time I read it, when Simon's saying, "Don't let me go, don't let me go, don't let me go," and Tyler wrote for Eden to say, "Don't let him go." I was like, I just lost it. I mean, I get even emotional right now thinking about it, because it's like she had to go through her own pain too, and her own questioning too. And for Yusuf to be in that role where Mary Magdalene says to Eden, "I know you can't talk to Jesus directly right now, but he has words. Like, there are words that can," and I think that's a lesson for us today, where, not only do we have prayer, but we also have God's word to go to. And she's like, it's the words that the rabbi can give you. And it's kind of it's almost like a preview of when Jesus dies and leaves the earth. He still leaves his word. He still leaves his spirit. Yeah. And so when Yusuf is able to have a role in making Eden realize from the Psalms that this is not the end of the story. And then she turns and she's now praying not only for herself, but for Simon. I was like, man, if we can pull this off, I was like, if we can actually make this work, this is going to be, the most impactful thing The Chosen's ever done. And it just felt like God really put the pieces in place and downloaded this to us. And so we're very, like, the responses we're seeing from people who've seen it has just been really, really overwhelming. Dude, this is, I say this in my spoiler review, or spoiler-free review, like this television episode, that scene comes from the same humanity that gave us, like, New Coke. Do you realize how, like, insane this is? What these two episodes on the big screen, they're insane. You and Tyler and Ryan, you guys are absolute geniuses. This is, like, it's incredible. It's amazing. It's so good. It makes Avengers Endgame look like
like a kiddie ride. It's
Okay. Well, maybe you're going a little far with that, because Endgame is great. But what it means a lot to hear you say that, Eli, because what we want to do with this show is not only give people who believe a look at God's word and a look at Scripture and a kind of bringing it to a more visual audio place so that you fall in love with the Bible even more. But then there's the whole point of wanting to make a good show. And like you love God. You've seen plenty of movies and shows from people who love God that you're like, I can't even watch this because it's so bad. Now, I'm not criticizing other people. I've made my own bad movies too. But what's really encouraging sometimes is when we make an episode or a scene, and this isn't the reason we do it, but it is a nice result that not only can live up to other shows and movies, but sometimes can maybe, I'm not saying better than, but like we can do things that actually haven't been done before. Because a lot of times I think we Christians as artists, we're always copying other people, and we're always like a poor man's version of what they do.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's fun sometimes to do stuff that actually hasn't been done by anybody before. Mm-hmm. And we were looking for ways, like we looked, there's another movie that I haven't even seen, but we watched on YouTube how they did a walking on water sequence. It was some big kind of superhero, and he walked on a lake, and he had a fight with this woman who was underwater, and they were two superheroes or villains, going after each other. So we watched how they did it. There's actually, and we thought that's cool. And we learned a few things from them, but like, let's go for broke. Let's be the people who are actually setting the standard sometimes. And I'm not delusioned or anything. I know that we're not going to ever win an Emmy, and there's shows that I watch that have more money and bigger cast and crew than we do. But sometimes it's fun to just go, let's be the ones who do something that's never been done before. And I felt like we were able to do that in this episode. But again, to be clear, if it doesn't matter, if it's not spiritually or emotionally impactful, then it's a waste of time and money.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys did the hard work. You set it up story-wise. I mean, it's because it was the only way. You wrote it to where it's the only conclusion to Simon's and Eden, both their storyline. That's the only way it could have resolved. If they just teleported to the other side of the lake, there would be no way to conclude or finish that storyline. It's the only way. So that was just this is a big feat, because visual effects wise, again, it's a marvel. Like it visually looks amazing. I mean, I saw it once, but it's from that little experience, it was beautiful. It looks incredible, and I can't wait to pause it and just look at all of because it really is a beautifully shot like sequence. It's as good as anything anyone's ever been able to make. It's not just like a poor man's version of anything. It's like
our visual effects team, I mean, all our departments really stepped up. Our stunt team, who's in the water while these guys are out there, and the art department, who a couple of years ago built the boat, and that's still the same boat that we used back in season 1, and putting it in the tank. And our production office and team, who's secured the location. And I mean, even the music. I remember the first time I heard the music from Matt and Dan, I couldn't breathe. I was just watching the scene. I was like watching it as a viewer, almost just like, I am so tense right now. And it's just the music is so strong. And then for it to, when they go underwater and what the music does, and then the choice, it was the composer's idea to not have any music after Simon and Jesus get on the boat and Jesus calms the water. And I was like, well, this is the most emotional part of the whole season. We have to, like, the whole season, we've been taking the audience through such crap. Like all season long, they've been so miserable and depressed and painful for Simon and Eden. And why are they acting this way? And when are the things going to be okay? And now they're finally going to be okay. And I'm like, don't we need a beautiful music cue? And the composers were like, no, let it play. And so it was their idea to not have music in that moment. And they were right. And then to take us that Psalm, I mean, I couldn't believe it was a year and a half ago when I read Psalm 77 in church. I don't remember why. I think the pastor might've said something to it. And I'm reading that Psalm and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is season 3. This is the whole season. This is pain and desperation and longing, and then remembrance, and there's a turn, like when Yusuf says, "That's not the whole psalm, is it?" It's so beautiful. And then it ends with him saying, "Your way was through the sea, but your footprints were unseen." I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is just amazing. And so, and then, so being able to tie in the writing of that psalm with David and Bathsheba and ending the episode that way, I just was like, this is God's done so many cool things and put so many pieces in place, and we get to stitch them together and present them in a fresh way. It's such a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, when the episode ended, or when we were montaging through all the different characters in the choir starts back up and the guy kept reading the psalm, I was like, that's it. I'm done. It's perfect. There's nothing they could do better to make it better right now.
I was one way when you found me. I was not the one you see.